The big reveal.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow, man, I'm blown away.
That was fun. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That looks awesome.
Let me hang out with your pups. And...
Like, I'm working on a sign right now,
Yeah.
and I sketched it out, and then I traced that with tracing paper,
Yeah.
more refined with an architect ruler to scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take that and then I take a picture of it with my phone, and then take a lightning to HDMI adapter, and then plug my phone into a projector.
Oh, cool.
Project it onto my final surface, or I use a pounce pattern.
What's that?
It's like so lettering. There's all lines and shapes. So you just go over it with like this wheel. It's almost like a spur on a stick.
Okay.
And you trace your line work.
And it leaves little dots everywhere?
Yeah, it punctures holes into your sheet of paper. Then you take that, tape it over your surface, and use a pounce pad, which is a pad. It almost looks like an eraser, but you refill it with chalk and empty it. It's like a pouch of chalk. And then you...
So it goes through the little tiny holes on the paper?
And so the chalk goes through, and it transfers the image, and it's like a dotted outline of what you need to...
That's genius.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
But it's like anything though. I feel like people have this idea that if you use a powerful tool, that it doesn't require a lot of skill. But it's like even with the most beautiful outline dotted thing, you still have to be very surgical and make it look good.
Absolutely. And that's the best part. It's like it kind of like puts you in your place, because you go to pull a line, and you look back at it and you hold it at a certain angle and you look up your line, and yeah, it's all over the place.
Right.
But if you just kind of squint from afar, it looks, like super perfect.
Okay, that's really interesting that you use the squint and look at it from afar.
Or an angle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the most core universal principles of observational drawing like this that I've came across everywhere. Every book I've read, every great artist I've studied with have said the same thing. And I was like, I bet this is a universal skill. I bet really good hairdressers probably use it to see the shape of the head. I bet so you just totally confirmed that for me. It's just universally applicable.
I think you're right. And now too, I'm in construction, and when we're doing the building and our siding needs to line up, we literally step back and kind of eye it in. We literally use that terminology. How's it eye in? How's the...
See, that's fascinating, because it seems like
it's so applicable to everything.
You got to do what you can do to see the whole thing at once and not get sucked into the details, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's true too.
So yeah, and lettering, it's another visual art field, right? You gotta make interesting dynamic shapes.
The most important thing that I've learned is the use of your dead space and your layout, and that's super important.
Does it feel like if you have a bad layout, it doesn't matter how good you make the letters, it's just gonna...
No, because I still appreciate them. It just... and this is totally my opinion.
Right.
I still appreciate them. I'll still stop and stare at a sign as I'm walking down the street or whatever. But yeah, sometimes the layout is just it just made the margins, proportionate, and done something with the dead space. I don't know.
So with the advent of even more and more powerful tools for... Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like that's been kind of enhancing the final product, or do you think it's kind of deteriorating?
So I think there's a lot of things you can apply with new tools and a computer and new technology and powerful tools, and to your benefit in the right way. But then you could also it could really decay the integrity of the art by it's just boom, 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 regurgitation, boom, boom, boom. No, there's no flow to it. It's just a
Got it.
sticker. It's a font. It's over and over and over and over. It's like Times New Roman on building. I don't know.
There's a really well-known digital artist named Craig Mullins.
Now that type of digital art, like
Yeah.
that is, see, that's different to me. Like I appreciate that. It's incredible what some people do.
It's definitely an interesting thing, right? Because it's like you're painting, but like it's this magic paintbrush with an undo button. You can like,
Yeah, and then also like layers. Like
Yeah.
when I do watercolor or anything like that, you work in layers.
and you have to like manually create your own
Yeah,
layers.
so when like I see people, I understood the concept of like how layers work and all that,
Yeah,
but I'm like, oh, it feels weird just being like, oh, where's this part of the drawing or this shading? Oh, it's on layer 6, and then you
Right,
go and then
right.
change it, and it's a sliding scale, and it's crazy.
But this guy I'm referring to was kind of like the godfather of digital painting
Mhm.
because he was looking at really famous, like really beautiful oil paintings and basically using MS Paint and a mouse
Mhm.
and using that style of painting. And so it was something no one ever seen before. So he's like the godfather of digital art and just really his work is just stunning and he still has that kind of vitality of like bravura oil painting but using the digital media. But it's interesting because if you ask him, I've heard in an interview he said despite the fact that he's like so influential in that technology coming to the forefront and he's like the problem is the more powerful the tool the less you see the artist.
Mm.
And he's like ultimately I think for me if I could just do pencil and paper that'd be
Yeah,
it,
there's
it's
something
it's
about it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
interesting.
interesting. I like that.
Yeah, interesting to think about, and I imagine in your field, which is like uh industrial art field as well, it's like I'm sure the tools,
Yeah.
if you like use it without designing and thinking, you could end
Uh-huh.
up with the same looking
Yeah,
signs
it's gonna
over and
look like
over
a
and
strip mall in
yeah.
California, where it's just like.
Yeah.
But it's funny. There's this movie called it's called Sign Painters that I watch, and there's a quote in that where someone says, along came the vinyl plotter,
Yeah.
and with that, the death of the sign painter.
Huh.
But then he's like, but here's the thing, drum machine doesn't have soul.
Right. Right.
There's a movement to your art when a human's doing it. There's
Right.
perfect imperfections.
I think that's coming a lot with the new like AI drawings. Have you seen those?
Mm-mm.
So basically, it's getting pretty
Is it
sophisticated.
where the plug in whatever you want and
Like you just type a
yes,
prompt and it'll
exactly.
generate an image.
Exactly.
But the thing is that it's actually getting really good to where uh, they're implementing styles. So you can say, put an astronaut on Mars, but with
Art Deco.
but in the style of Thomas Kincaid, and it'll make like this like weird spacey Kincaid painting that isn't, it's not like perfect, but it definitely
knows what it's trying to do.
yeah, exactly. Like you're right, you nailed it on the head. It seems like it knows what it's trying to do. And I think a lot of people in the concept art world where it's like so much of their paycheck is just taking an idea and bringing it into an image form to like be developed further. They're like, well, what if they just start using but I don't know though. You know what I mean? I feel like
you hear it everywhere. It's like, oh, we're not gonna have people checking you out at the store.
right. It's always the Tucker germs.
Yeah. Oh, that's literally my text message alert.
Is it really?
Yeah. If my phone is not on silent and someone texts me, it goes
Tucker germs.
Yeah.
Back to the pile.
Classic.
Classic. Yeah. But yeah, I'm kind of like I'll believe it when I see it where it's like artists can be replaced with technology. I feel like okay, yeah, maybe uh we can do self-checkout at the grocery store and that's not like the end of the world because then you have other jobs and this and that, but like once you get into the creative field, though, you'd like to
Oh
think
yeah.
that's like the fact that it's a human being is kind of irreplaceable, but I guess that's the question now,
That is the
right?
question.
Yeah.
Is it?
Do you feel like there's a quality to a hand painted sign that just like can't be replaced?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. Just when I talk to someone about a sign that they commissioned me to do, I'm like,
Hmm.
like I sit down and try to talk to them about like, what do you think about this? How do you feel about that?
Right.
What vibe are you going for? And
Hmm.
so I take all that into consideration when I'm like sketching something up.
Right.
And so that means maybe it just means a lot to me, but I know
Right.
I wouldn't to a machine.
Right. Right.
So just the fact that it's all, it's meaningful to me makes it that much more special at the end,
Yeah, and it sounds like
well thought out.
it's very custom too,
You
right?
care,
It's
yeah,
like exactly what they want, and
yeah, and you care about what you're doing and take pride in it.
I imagine you have to be familiar with a lot of different typefaces.
Yeah, I can't name them all, but if someone describes them to me, I'm like, yep, I can do that. I
Yeah,
can make
see,
it look like that.
Jenna does that all the time. We'll be like out somewhere and she'll be like, "You see that typeface? That's hobo." Or see that? That's
That's
papyrus.
Egyptian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's like there's all
That's a
these.
Gothic block.
Yeah. And I'm always like, "You nerd,"
Yeah, no,
but
that's
I
awesome.
do the same thing if I see like,
Oh no, it's funny.
yeah.
Sometimes Leslie and I will be walking down. I'm like, and I'll stop in the doorway, and it's like, oh, this is water gilded reverse sign painted here on the glass.
Recently in like my oil paintings, I've been teaching myself gilding.
Oh, okay. I saw that.
Yeah,
Are you using genuine leaf?
I'm using imitation because I
Mhm.
feel like with the learning curve I'm gonna be subjecting myself
Mhm.
to, it would be kind of a waste to use like real gold.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But
Well,
I would definitely like to pick your brain on it
yeah.
because it seems to be a whole like trade skill in itself is like
Dep-
the art of gilding is like very
oh yeah. If
in
you
depth.
really want to get into it, you can get
Yeah,
really in depth. I know some practical stuff, and
yeah.
I'm familiar with it, and I've done it, and I've learned a lot of techniques. But what I'm really into is like glass water building,
Oh, cool.
and that's difficult.
What
And
exactly is that
so
then?
like there's signs that are reverse painted so that your image on the sign that you see the glass the front of it, it's all painted in its layers in reverse from behind.
Right, right, because you got to see
Yeah,
the other side of it.
exactly.
Okay.
So water gilding is basically you take your loose gold leaf. It's not a transfer leaf,
Okay.
so it's a loose sheet, and you pick it up with the gilder's tip. I have one I can show you. Um,
I've heard water gilding is a very, very, very complicated
oh yeah.
process.
And then you saturate your glass with size, which is made from gelatin capsules, and
Okay.
you melt it down. And depending on the finish that you want, you can go really heavy with gelatin or a little bit lighter. It depends how you like your mix.
Okay.
And what you do is you just saturate the glass and then hold up your leaf. And I'm pretty sure it's like the surface tension from the water on the glass sucks like the gold leaf because it's so thin and
Wild.
dainty.
Right, right, right.
And it just sucks it flat, completely wrinkleless, just boom, and it leaves a like gold mirror gold finish
That's wild.
once it dries.
Wow.
And so then, yeah, you can back it so you can paint something over it on the back, and then you can brush off the excess gold, and then that transfer of whatever image you just backed on it is in pure mirror finished gold.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
sweet process.
I realized that like just by adding gold to my oil paintings,
Mhm.
it's just like activating this like childhood excitement of when I opened a Pokemon pack and there's like shiny
Shiny,
cards.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
like well now it's shiny.
Yeah,
So
I've always wanted to do. So I have some signs I can show you
yeah,
with a little bit of gold leaf, but only signing my artwork with gold leafing it, doing
that's yeah.
just my signature or initial or whatever. always.
I can't believe I didn't think of this until just now. But for a while, I was like kind of struggling to think of what to get Jenna for her birthday. And one thing I thought of was like making her a lunar creative sign for her business. But I'm so regretful I forgot that you're a sign painter in that moment because I was like gonna make it myself and I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, oh, it probably is gonna turn out like shit. So I just like bought her something,
Oh,
but I'm like that would have been so cool to
dude,
just
yeah.
like deliver. I'm gonna still have to go through with that idea and
Yeah,
just
no,
like
I'm willing to um, paint something. That'd be awesome.
it would. She works from home, so it would be just more like a really cool, badass like decor to
Yeah,
have in her space is
that's
like
awesome.
I
Yeah,
have a
I
custom
painted a couple
sign.
little custom like uh, signs for people in their office or
Yeah,
their house or whatever.
it's just cool because it's like working from home, you almost have to like find ways
I
to
know.
imbue some sort of like officeness to it so you feel
I feel
like
bad for Cecily because she works from home
yeah,
and she would work from home and then be off and be at home.
yep,
And I don't know, I felt guilty for almost leaving to go to work. Like
because
I
you're
get to
like,
go
oh, I get to
outside.
see a different space than you
Yeah,
did.
exactly. Go outside or
Yeah,
something.
you gotta like make time to do it. Otherwise, you just like get in the flow of your routine and
Oh
you're
yeah.
like, oh wow, it's been a day and I haven't left my house. Yeah, I'm pretty much just like painting in our kitchen right now.
Uh-huh.
So I'll be in the kitchen
This is
painting.
also my studio over here.
Yeah, perfect. And Jenna will be in like our bedroom, which is her office during the day.
Yeah.
And so we've like kind of created a little office feel to it, but
Nice.
there are definitely
So
times
almost
where yeah,
the workspace.
yeah, where I'll be like, oh, we haven't left the house. It's weird because it's like I can ballpark, and then if with just like 5 careful minutes of uh, chiseling and deciding, then I can get back into like uh, not being so exact. It's like that weird critical area where it could be like the nose and the eye line is tilted this way, but the lower half is
Oh
tilted the
yeah,
other. So then I'm like, oh shit.
yeah. Oh shit. I feel that.
Yeah, but I feel like I like doing this kind of sketching from life the best because I feel like when I'm drawing from a reference, it's just like me personally, but I feel like there's a right and a wrong answer suddenly.
Yes, because there's a definitive still.
Yeah, versus like, oh, there isn't a definitive still of you in this pose that I'm looking at, so I'm like,
So we're able to play with some stuff here.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So I think people who are really good at doing like working from reference just manage to maintain that awareness even when they're using the reference they're thinking like no I got a lot of like deciding I'm doing here but yeah
Because for that Black Panther that I was drawing that body shape,
yeah
I redrew it like 4 times, and I kept looking at 3 or 4 different references, all
yeah
kind of in the same pose.
yeah
And the whole time, I was never finished with it when I restarted, and I just stopped because I felt like it was not right. Like
interesting
it's too big. This hind leg needs to be bent like more. Like that's way too big. The neck's gonna come down like too thin. Like so then I would restart, and then on one of them I finally just kept going, and when I was done I was like, oh okay, it does look like
huh
right. But I was like stopping because I was looking at the reference so much
right
that I'm like, I'm not doing this right. This is not what it's supposed to look like.
somebody made a good way of describing it where it's like you use the reference doesn't use you but I don't know if I'm like there yet to do that properly. The reference uses me big time. That's why I like. For me, I don't even have a reference here, so it feels like more of a magic trick. It's like I feel like I'm pulling something out of thin air, working like this versus like if I had a photo of you, I feel like I would have to be. I would have to be measuring and being super careful
Figure it
otherwise
out or something.
yeah
I don't know.
So that's the tricky part though. But I don't want to be that way. I feel like I would be just as like super flexible, and I could look at a reference and just remember that I'm making decisions and try to, like, I don't know, use a time limit or find some way to kind of like hack my brain. But it's still an ongoing thing. I think what helps if I don't have a model is sometimes I'll just like draw from my imagination.
Yep.
And I feel like that somehow tricks my brain a little bit, because then I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to look at here either, and then I kind of behave as if I'm working from life, because it's the moment there's that feeling of like,
yeah, it's almost like you're giving yourself a baseline for the critique of your work. Yeah.
But if you ask me consciously, I'm like, no, looking like the photo isn't the goal, but it's it's just too powerful, I think. Sometimes I feel like when I get like a beautiful HD photo, it's like you would almost think, oh, cool, I could do a better artwork. But because then I have to like fight against this really great photo reference, and I have like a really clear right or wrong answer. Exactly. Then I'm like, oh man, it's almost harder. So one time I had a commission, and the client gave me probably the worst reference of all times in terms of like the scale of the project versus the actual scale of the reference. It was like printed on computer paper to where the heads were the size of a quarter, and it was to be blown up into a life-size oil painting, and the print quality was like home computer level.
What? At that point, can you request a different like?
Oh man, that was the biggest racket, because they thought that they needed to use that reference because it was like the only image where they liked their facial expression in both, like they both were looking good in that photo. But I'm like, man, if I had known that, I would have let you know, hey, give me a good photo of him, good photo of her. I can invent a new image, but I think it's just, that was their understanding at the time of what a commission painting is. It's like, oh, you find your best photo, and then they'll turn it into a painting. But it's like I have the ability to invent something that's like the best of this photo and the best of that, and just anyway, that was a huge learning experience for me, is like working with clients where you realize, don't assume that they know anything about your field and take them at their word. If like, ask good questions, because then you might find out, oh, they actually aren't in love with this photo. It's just the only one they know of where they like his smile and her smile. But yeah, so man, that was
by the way, this is a terrible photo.
Yeah, exactly. But
just so you're aware,
I was also a little bit nervous though, because it was probably like my most important commission to date.
The pressure of that, or wanting to not make you want it to be a good experience for them too.
Right, exactly, because it's like, oh man.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's a dynamic, you gotta figure out where you do want to say something,
push back a little bit, this isn't a great. So my workaround for that was I took the little thumbnail terrible reference portraits, and I just like kept doing sketches of them over and over and over until I had like a life-size charcoal drawing that didn't look terrible. And so I just like tried to essentially create my own reference in charcoal. But that was probably the most involved like planning in a piece I've ever had to do. So, and yeah, I definitely learned a lot. But I'm sure there's like a lot you've learned dealing with clients. The whole business side of it's like a whole separate skill set.
And then I have a lot of like repeat clients,
which is awesome.
It's
right?
awesome.
Yeah.
But when you get to a point like where they want to give you all the creative power, and that's fine. but it means something completely different to them than to me.
Yeah.
Where I'm not getting references, they have no idea what they want, and with the sign, it's like we gotta really come up with, you know, the verbiage together here. We gotta figure out what is a clear and concise way to like put this out there,
Right.
for people to read and understand.
It could almost like be more difficult if they're not giving you enough, because then you're also the copywriter and the,
you know, there have been those customers that now, because I've done so much work for them, I know what I can get away with, but while I was dealing with them, it was like, I guess I'm just gonna send it, and I think they'll like it. Like, I trust myself to make it look nice, at least at the end of the day.
That's actually,
or customers are like, oh yeah, just whatever you think, or whatever you think is, and I'm like, okay.
Which would be great if, when it comes time to deliver the final product, they remember that they said whatever you think, but suddenly it becomes then they have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
After you've like done the whole thing on your own.
Yeah, and then like there's been a lot of issues now where like I have my habits now. I'll make sure that I don't start anything without X, you know, or have a clear contract of like what I'm actually doing. I don't accept money from people until we've agreed on the final product or anything like that. Because there has been issues like that where there's a misunderstanding.
Right.
And it's not really about the work. It's more there's a misunderstanding of how much, you know, I'm being compensated for it, because they don't understand what went into it, and they're just like, what?
Right.
That's insane.
See, I want a studio dog. It's like,
not that one. She's gonna be bothering you. No, man, I'm just a huge animal lover.
Yeah.
It might not show, but definitely deep down.
I imagine that has a lot to do with being a vegan and.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a weird journey for me to end up at being vegan. I just.
How long have you been vegan?
Since 2013-ish.
Okay, yeah, so 14. That's a while.
Yeah, 2014. Yeah.
Was it like?
It just kind of happened. I was already so. I'm trying to think of how I can make this long story short, or somewhat short or condensed. I was working with this guy named Brandon at a pizza shop, and during that time in my life, I had a very negative outlook on life. And, just not a pleasant person, and I acknowledge that. But I did not want to be like that. And Brandon was the complete opposite, very easygoing, very happy person. But him and I got along really well. We prepped together, and then one day, you know, I just kind of like asked him, I'm like, dude, how do you do it?
Yeah, how are you such in good spirits all the time?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, and I knew he was like Buddhist, and yeah, you know, because of that, he was vegetarian. So he kind of was the catalyst in trying to find my own inner peace and doing soul searching of my own and trying to become a better person just on my own.
Yeah.
And once I accepted that I do have the power to like be a better person and control the situation, like if someone cuts me off, I don't have to get angry, like I'm, you know, remain in control of my emotions and all that. And like it doesn't have to end with me.
Yeah.
I could take it further and, you know, really humble myself by also not doing harm to others.
Right.
Or supporting, you know, that industry. And so then I was like, oh, I'll go vegetarian, because it definitely was because of the path I was on, and I wanted to just enlighten myself and humble myself. And then it was like, well, if I'm not eating meat, then I guess I'll just go vegan. And it was just like that.
So it was kind of more of a step in a bigger kind of, for lack of a better word, like a spiritual
definitely
path.
I just needed to like be humbled and like definitely actively try not to be negative and harmful to myself or others, you know.
Did you notice like attitude shift coinciding with the new diet?
Not this. I wouldn't. Yeah, yes, but I didn't notice it till after a while.
Got it.
It was like probably a couple of years until I really was like, yeah, it was a good decision.
It was kind of more of a hindsight insight. You're like, wow, I'm actually, if I look back, I've actually been.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
It worked. Like, it definitely has helped me become more aware. And and then I just stuck with it. Recently, there's been a few instances where I have eaten eggs.
Yeah.
Because now at this point of my journey, I'm trying to look at it in the bigger scope of how can I still consume what I want to and keep myself happy, but also not hurt anything else or support an industry that I don't agree with or whatever. And diet's easy to do that with because I can talk about it a lot of other materialistic things that I'm ashamed of owning or like buying, or, you know. But it's just, it just has stuck with me. And now, like I said, I'm thinking about, sustainably doing things and like raising my own animals, maybe.
Right.
Maybe going fishing and only eating that. Taking it back to the self-sustainable, responsible management of how we feed ourselves and how we take care of the earth is what it's turned into for me now too.
Is there a feeling that accompanies the idea of opening up these new considerations like eating eggs or eating fish? Is there kind of like a weird feeling like, oh, I'm not a good vegan anymore or whatever?
There is, but I'm not affected by it. But I know that there is because the vegan community, say what there's a lot of great people, but they're definitely there's militant people in that community or people that aren't seeing it the scope that I am, and they're like, this is the way, and whoever's not vegan and blah blah blah, and
it seems like,
and for me it's just learning,
right?
Just that makes me feel like there's going to be people in the vegan community that think I'm not a true vegan or I eat vegan. I eat an egg here and there. And I'm happy with that. I'm personally happy with that because I'm okay with myself now.
Right.
Because of my diet and because of trying to be a better person.
I haven't experienced it, but I just know from Jenna's experience, we've like reintroduced farm fresh eggs because like when we were traveling the road, like, my sister had her own chickens and like was gonna cook for us, and she's like, I want to eat a farm fresh egg. That sounds awesome, But then there's like
Is she vegetarian?
So Jenna's been vegan for a very long time, but just recently she's reintroduced eggs and fish. And there's exactly.
It's the exact same thing, kind of situation where I had to take a second and really think about that decision and be like, what is really like? I don't know. I've never like really self-reflected that much in my entire life with myself. But when it comes to that decision, I've definitely have at least noticed that I think about what I'm deciding to do.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah. But we talked about it, and she's like, it feels like there's a bigger psychological wall around the idea of like, well, for a long time I valued these principles, but now I'm, one could say I'm abandoning them, and there's some psychological walls of like, well, now maybe someone could say I'm not true to my word, or it's something about like an integrity thing, but I just on the outside, I'm just looking at it and saying, well, that's just part of the being a person, is you like learn new information and you adapt to a situation and you evolve, and that doesn't mean that you like are going back on anything. It's just you have new data, right? So, but I definitely understand it's probably hard to be committed to something and you have some sort of like belief system surrounding that decision, and then like reconsidering, then it's like you're also challenging like your belief system and not just what you eat.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it's tough. I think it also has to do with what was the decision for you to be vegan in the first place?
Yeah.
Because there was a time, like, I come from like the hardcore metal community, and vegan straight edge is a big thing.
Yeah, right.
And it's there. I'm pretty sure I can say that a lot of those people don't have that same experience of why they chose to be vegan that I do. It's just like, oh, Earth Crisis wrote a song about the animal, so I'm vegan. And
Right.
I'm vegan. You know?
It's it might not be a spiritual thing as much as like a trend that they're keeping up with.
Exactly. And you know, they all became sellouts.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm still vegan. It was just a different approach, I think. And that's why it was also as easy as it was for me to stay committed that long.
Yeah.
That's how easy it was for me to also be okay with reintroducing eggs or whatever. Now it's just a practice, like I said, to try to find the most sustainable and trying to, or you know, that's maybe the new trend too.
It's funny how much I quote books because, like, if you actually map it out, I'm not my daily hours. I probably like read so sporadically.
Yeah.
The one I'm reading right now is like Atomic Habits, and it's really interesting because
I think Cecily checked that out.
Yeah, a lot of those like kind of self-helpy motivation books I check out of because they just like make you feel like more of a lazy piece of as you're as you're reading them, you know. But
Onyx, no.
But this one, he's like really just kind of analyzing where habits come from, and kind of more of like, if you understand it, you're more able to control it. And it's like he talks about how people that you might describe as super disciplined, productive people, maybe they're not actually, they don't have any more willpower than you do, but they are really good at structuring their environment in a way that's conducive to their habits. They're really good at structuring, you know. So he talks a lot about environmental factors and this and that. But one area I thought was really interesting is he talks about how, you know, if there is a component of identity and ownership around an idea, you're far more likely to stick to it. So, like, for example, the difference between saying, I'm trying to quit smoking versus like, I'm not a smoker. And it's like, if there's a sort of character, identity, you know, structure around it, then it's like, then you're not smoking because you really want to and you had a moment of weakness. You're actually like betraying your character, right? And that's when these things become a little bit more concrete in your personality. So I've just been trying to think about it, and so there's a weird period of kind of unfucking your brain with, dude, kind of like you were talking about how you saw you were a certain way and then you wanted to change, and then you started to just find what that was like, so you did change your diet, and you know, it was all about like kind of being a better person. I definitely had kind of a similar thing where I started to realize I was actually kind of a high stress person, and I was bringing a lot of anxiety into a lot of my like friendships and relationships and this and that. And I didn't have like a radical diet change or anything, but it was like, definitely I had to kind of like redefine my relationship with my mind and like how much I believed it when it would go down a rabbit hole of like, oh, well, this, you know, and so
I can relate to that.
Yeah, so like, dude, unless it's like a dire meeting or something where there's like, I'm late to my own workshop or something with timing stuff, I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna chill and meditate, and you know, it's like
No, for me, that's something that I hate being late.
Yeah.
Cecily's a lot more relaxed about being late. I'll tell you that much.
That's an interesting thing in a partnership too, is like people have different tolerances for that, like anything, right? So, and just
yeah, maybe we could
draw some
building.
That sounds awesome, actually. I definitely
like burnishing.
Yeah, I'd see. So my introduction to that stuff is gilding on a canvas. And so thankfully there's this like really talented Ukrainian painter that I'm following on Patreon who basically has a background in kind of like medieval gilding practices. So dude, some of the stuff he introduces like doesn't exist elsewhere on the internet, like beer resin
Oh, I
gilding
know,
and
dude.
stuff like that. Yeah, you'd like to think that some of these really important things are like preserved and
Yeah, and I
but
think I don't know. Maybe it's because people are finally starting to take an interest in very specific forms of art. I feel like
yeah.
on a bigger spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So like back then, the pool of people that were interested, was relatable to that one book. There was one book because only 50 people cared,
Right.
or whatever. And now it's like I feel like you can reach such a bigger audience that a lot more people are turning to it or want to learn about it. That there's a little bit more resources finally.
What got you into gilding? Is it just
Sign painting?
so that's like pretty standard practice in sign
Yeah, and
painting?
I wouldn't say that I'm a gilder or anything. I do use gold leaf
Yeah.
and gold gilding techniques.
Dude,
Um,
it would be awesome to like make some frames together and gild them.
oh, see, so that's like
Yeah, because that sounds like so many of your skills. Like I would have to pick your brain about because
oh yeah,
I've like never made my own frame. I haven't gilded anything other than canvas, and there's just like such a craft to that people.
glass, man, glass is where
Oh,
it's at.
really?
I just the finish on glass when you're done with your piece is just like that's just unreal. It's like way better than just like a flat matte surface,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
People paint on glass too. That could be like
Yeah.
a interesting combination.
Yeah, I mean, people do a lot of stuff with glass. Like, I've seen people do layered, like multiple sheets of glass, different layers, and there's depth to, the painting.
Yeah.
Because it's
Have you ever worked with copper?
copper leaf?
Yeah.
No.
Or even just like copper as a surface for working on?
Oh, no.
So apparently copper is actually like in the realm of chemistry, the bond between oil paint and copper is actually way better than anything else.
Really?
And so some people have been doing some really cool stuff painting on copper, but I haven't really gotten into it. I think that could be, interesting to just dabble around with like new materials and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's always fun.
yeah, like, but glass, I never even thought you could gild glass, but
Yeah.
that sounds
Reverse water gilding is like insane.
would you have to paint the image like on the inside too though? So it'd be like, if I did your portrait on glass, it would be like a mirror image when we looked at it.
Yeah.
So that would be
And that's the thing, you would have to think of it in reverse.
right.
Because the layer that's going to show first is your final top.
Oh, wow.
So you build it backwards.
Dude, when I was a kid, we were homeschooled, and my mom was trying to like teach us to read and write, and for whatever reason, I had this weird thing where I would write stories, but they would be mirror images. Like you could hold it up to a mirror and read it properly, but I thought I was writing properly. Like I didn't realize I was writing a mirror image. So just the thought of like painting in a mirror image just like kind of brought me back to that memory randomly. But like I would basically be doing that again, like
Yeah.
doing a
Doing it in reverse.
wow.
It's But once you got your final like outline layer and your definitive like top layer, I guess, when you're in reverse, then you just paint within the lines at that
Right.
point. And you can go wherever because that other layer is already in front of that, and so it's only backing it.
So it can like inform what you're already doing. It's just probably the first part is probably the hardest.
Yes, definitely. And then after that, you definitely have a lot more freedom.
Man. I think I'm just about at a point where I'm gonna have you come look at it because I think I just have a couple more little areas to resolve. It's weird because it's like I never know how long a piece is gonna take because sometimes I can agonize and it never looks good, or sometimes I can like stumble upon something that looks okay pretty quickly, and then it's a matter of how much do I even need to polish this thing before it's, you know, so.
Oh, thanks. What's wrong, though? Are you hungry?
What a cutie.
Alright. No, right down. Oh, I shouldn't let you do that.
Cool, man. Let's call it.
Sweet. Jin 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 jin.
I think.
God, these chairs look cool, but they're not the most comfortable. I'm sorry.
I think they look
It's
awesome.
for
Yeah.
the gram.
It's for the gram, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
The big reveal.
Wow. That's incredible. Wow, man. I'm blown away.
That was fun. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That looks awesome.
Let me hang out with your pups.
Wow, what is this effect? Here, these strokes?
That's just the charcoal falling down.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.